Hey, Mike here with Canadian Musician, and I'm here at the Soho Metropolitan Hotel in Toronto, sitting next to a Canadian legend, Roch Voisine. You're smiling, but I must say it's true.
Third one today that says this. I'm going, what? Really? Maybe it's because you haven't seen me in such a long time. Maybe it's been 12 years since my last English record. Maybe people in Canada think, gee whiz, I wonder. Oh, he's back. Oh.
We'll get into that, but it is one of Canada's, I guess, over the last 25 years, been one of Canada's greatest musical, exports. Okay. Officer of the Order of Canada, multi-platinum many times over, and just releasing the kind of the standard for any classic artist, the greatest hits collection. And so let's start with that. You just released My Very Best, which is an all English greatest hits collection with 4 new songs as well. I want to start with one of the new songs that many people will have heard, Living Out My Dreams, which was the theme for the Canadian Olympians in Sochi. I guess, what was the story behind that song? How did that come about specifically for this purpose?
Actually, it's interesting because it's a song that we wrote a few years back. And I co-wrote this with 2 very good friends of mine living in LA now. Canadian-born singer, songwriter, producer Dean Landon, and his lovely co-worker, Annika Paris. They're very good friends of mine, and we worked on this song years ago. And felt that this song deserved a special platform, a great event. It was written for something like that, because I think it goes the values carried in this songs are perfectly fitted for an Olympic theme, which it is now. But it also goes beyond that. I mean, obviously, living your dreams is not something that only the Olympians can do. Anybody can have dreams and hopefully live them. So we basically had this song sitting on a shelf for a few years. And I would say about 8 months prior to the Olympics, I'm sort of sitting there, we're putting the greatest hits record together. We did it, you mentioned there were 4 new tunes on this. It's very, how should I say this, European. The Europeans do that a lot in order to have some new material, so you get a chance to be played on the radio, basically. It's on a greatest hits record. You will add a few bonus tracks and a few new songs. So there was this song there, and we hadn't heard at the time about any Olympic theme, official, anything. So so I called my manager and I said, we got the perfect song here. We only have to, fix it. We can adapt it a bit. We can adapt it in French also. Let's get the ball rolling. Let's call some people and see what's happening. So he called basically COC first, Marcel Aubu, namely in Montreal, and then they loved the tune, and they basically sponsored us in a way. They have a lot of connections. We do too. So we came to the CBC with this and convinced them they absolutely needed to put it in their in the programs, and then we got the Montreal Symphonic Orchestra to play on it, and Tom Lord Algie in Florida to mix it, and basically made a big bang out of it. And this Craig's, it's like real teamwork also. It worked out pretty good. Right, and it's a fun song. It's obviously a big production song, but it works with just one guitar. Very cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
With that, like, you co-wrote that, and I seen I was just this morning, actually, in preparation for this, I was watching some of your past interviews, and specifically the one that you had done, as I mentioned to Sylvain earlier, your interview with Jian Gomeshi. I noticed you said in passing in that you love co-writing.
Yes, I do. I learned how to co-write in LA. Really, my first trips to LA in the mid-90s. I met a great man. His name is Don Grierson. He used to be A&R for Columbia, I think, in America. And he really specialized in songwriting, finding songs, had great relationships with songwriters all over America, and even in England. and he knew I was singer-songwriter, so our first work was to actually travel. New York, LA, we traveled in Nashville, we did all the big songwriters circle, and he introduced me to some of the best songwriters ever, and I had a chance. I had mostly worked on my own all that time prior to that, and all of a sudden, you know, working with the best, you learn something, obviously, and I think I thought it was the best way of writing tunes. I mean, no writer's block when you're 2 or 3 working on the song. Someone's bound to have an idea, and the mix is also interesting. It's like a live band. If you pick the musicians well, you don't need to tell them anything, because you just let them play. It's the same thing in a songwriting. I think in a songwriting relationship is if you find the right person to write with, then all you have to do is sit across from each other with piano and guitar, and things will happen.
For you, what's, aside from just the fact that you in a co-write, but how does your process work as far as, do you bring in a piano line, a guitar riff, a title? Is there a way that a song usually starts for you?
I'll walk into a writing relationship at any point. If you need a bit of a help for the lyric, I will. If you need a new idea, I can find one. If we need to work from an old idea, if we need to transform a song, I don't have a set way of writing a tune. Obviously, I'm first and foremost a melodist, so obviously I'll sit down with a guitar and come up with a few chords and put a melody on this, and maybe have a few words that sound well, what we call yogurt. You know, you'll fake you'll fake the English language, and you'll just make sounds that, you know, if you don't listen, it'll sound like a song, but it's nothing. But you put basically it's to put the vowels and get the vowels right and make it sound right, and see where you're gonna, you know, fit the words, and then it's sort of a process between the melody and the lyrics. So I'll do that maybe also, and then, you know, as many of my co-writers say, it's much easier to find a melody than write a good lyric. Yeah, you feel that everything's been said, you know, and it's especially, you know, what's hard is to work for you. It's my 25th record. Obviously, on 25 records in 25 years, I got maybe 5 or 6 records that were special projects I didn't write, but it's a lot of work, and it's a big body of work, but I'm the only one singing this. So all of a sudden you got this great idea, but you wrote it in 1991, this great line, yeah, but you said it in the song in 1991 on that record, so you can't repeat yourself, and it's getting, and I find it's getting, it becomes a problem after 25-30 years. It is. It's not a joke. It's how many times can you say I love you in the song over 25 years? And then you start obviously talking about different things, you know, and you're inspired by life in general. And it's hard to believe, but I don't only write love songs. You know, I write songs about other things too. It may not be everybody's favorite, but you know. There's a few songs, you know, but at one point it gets a bit complicated, and that's why, you know, especially if you work for the same artist as I have been for 25 years as a songwriter, at one point you just don't know what to say anymore. So you need help.
Do you find it, I guess, more difficult to either find melodies or lyrics in either French or English? Is there a difference for you, or are there different challenges?
No, I always write in English. Yeah, I 95% of the time I write an English tune, and then we'll adapt it, and I'll have it adapted for the French market. Really? It's always been like this. My first hit, Hélène, in '89 was an English tune.
I thought French was your first language. Is English your first language?
No, it's French. But very young in New Brunswick, you get to speak English, and you know, that's it. And you just, I don't know, music came that way. It was much. I think it's easier. It's a bit easier really? To write English songs than French songs. French is a very hard language to write in. It's a hard language. It doesn't. People may not think that, but it's actually a harder language to pronounce, to sing than English, obviously. It's very different than Italian, for instance. Italian is very flowing and very musical. French isn't.
And I have to admit, I don't know French, so I couldn't talk about the specifics, but I thought just the romantic languages, the Italian, the French would make for great, at least ballads would make for a great sound.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I mean, people have this image of Italian and French being the same thing because it's the romantic languages, right? They're both like romantic languages, but actually there's a big difference. Italian will flow and sing better than French. And I'm not the one saying this. I mean, you can ask great songwriters, French songwriters like Francis Cabrel, for instance, and he'll tell you exactly the same thing. He'll say, wow, English. And for a guy like that, actually say French is tough with all the beautiful lyrics he's written in his life. It's quite amazing, but he's right. It's tough,
Interesting. And well, with my very best and the greatest hits record, it's kind of a good time to, if you don't mind, kind of do a bit of a retrospective. Well, essentially, what I'm interested in is, as you mentioned, you grew up in northwestern New Brunswick. I think it was Edmundston specifically. I know Edmundston. I'm from New Brunswick. It's not a big place. Yeah, I'm from Moncton, so it's not a place like Toronto or Montreal where it's like, it's obvious the media is there, everything's there. It's obvious what you could do.
I mean, Moncton is way bigger than Edmundston.
Which isn't saying a lot.
Yeah, no, it's really small.
But growing up in Edmundston, was it always your dream? Like, how did the career come about?
Oh no, it wasn't. I wanted to be a hockey player. Really, like all the other kids on my streets. I took my younger brother's guitar. It was just sitting in the corner when I was 13 or 14, and I just started playing a few chords. I liked the sound of it, and I was just sort of interested in it, and that way, not more. It wasn't really a passion or anything, but I've always been, like writing essays and stuff like that in school. I was good, and I could express myself, and I was a very shy person. But just by sitting there and basically, writing a few lines about how I felt, like a diary, basically. And the very first songs I wrote were just like a couple lines, and then I got interested a little more into the musical and the songwriting process, by listening to Gordon Lightfoot and Harry Chapin and James Taylor and guys like that. And so I just learned another chord, and then I had like 3 chords I could play with, and then 4, and then 5, and because I never took guitar lessons or anything. Maybe I should have. But had good teachers. Well, that was a rough wake-up call when I first started my career, getting on stage in front of 20,000 people with 13-piece band. Okay, go. Man, you learn quick. At least you pick like 6 or 7 chords and you learn them really well so you can play with the big boys. But and yeah, that's how and I started writing them and putting them in and I would go I remember going to Ottawa U for 4 years, and every night, after doing the working or after hockey practice or after studying, I would go sit in the staircase. I used to live at the Stanton residence, and I would come out with my guitar and my book and sit in the staircase because it sounds good. Yeah, acoustics are great. I just sit there and always start with the last tune I wrote, and then I would work my way back, and all of a sudden people started coming out with their books and studying while listening to me, and all some nights they were like, some of my buddies would come up and say, man, there's people all the way down and all the way up, and they're all listening. I said, oh yeah, people were a bit shy at the beginning. I guess they didn't want to scare me or spook me, oh my god, I'm going back to my room. So they would, and then these guys were my first audience, really. And then I just, after 4 years of university, degree in kinesiology, and then a couple of years in physiotherapy, I just wanted to take a break, and I knew people in Montreal, and they said, why don't you come over and we'll try. And I took a leave of absence from my physiotherapy school for a couple of years, and that was 28 years ago. I don't think they'd take me back. Or maybe they would. I don't know. But I never came back.
You probably get the honorary degree at this point.
Yeah, I got one already from Moncton University. Oh, nice. There you go. Music. And music. I guess after 28 years.
And your career really skyrocketed
Yes.
from the start.
Yeah.
Famously, your first show was in front of 50,000 people on Canada Day, and I think it was like 85-ish, if I remember correctly. But
A lot of people.
you're
Very scary.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I still have blur images. I just thank God I was a bit, I don't know. I didn't realize what was happening. Yeah.
And your first album sold, I think it was something like 3 million copies. So the fact that you were drawing huge crowds right from the get-go, what did that mean for you as an artist, but specifically as a performer, since you didn't have that time like a lot of bands do to kind of build up your character as a performer?
I had a lot of people around me. I remember the very first concerts. I had this great, how do you say, metteur en scène, I guess artistic director, very famous artistic director, and Jean Bissonnette, who's used to work at Radio Canada, did the, he did TV. He was into TV. Did the Olympics in '76. I mean, he's an all-star. He's really, really good. Worked with Celine. He worked with a lot of people, and he just taught me a few basic things, and then I just took it from there. How to look at everybody. A lot of people will just walk up to the microphone and they're just and they, okay, that's a style. I'm not saying it's not a very famous artists do that, but he taught me how to make people feel they're part of your concert. Look here, look there, go. And then we had a pretty extensive stage organization with lights and effects and movement and things coming up and and I had to change also a lot, because it was pop music, right? So and then he would put X's on the stage and walk with me while I was singing, and he taught me the basics, right? And then I took it from there. It's just basically this works. And then working. I learned how to play the guitar on stage in front of 20,000 people. And I also learned how to deal and how to, be on stage with them,
Was it always, to do that takes a lot of courage, but to also
being stupid.
either
Not stupid.
well, kind of one way or the other.
Totally oblivious of what's happening in front of you, not quite realizing. I think I thought it was fun, but I think. I didn't want to see the forest and the trees, really, or the trees in the forest. I don't know how to say this, but I was sort of there, and to me, I was just having a lot of fun, and there were a lot of people, and the show was just as much for me in the audience as it was for them when I was on stage. It was those were great times. I had a lot of fun. Yeah. And
throughout your career, it's obviously you've had hits. You've been a multi-platinum star in English Canada, the English, I guess, Western English music, whatever you want to term it. But you've really, in a sustained way, reached a whole other plateau within the French markets in Europe, France, Quebec. To you to ever kind of feel like you're navigating two different careers or two different industries?
Oh, at one point I was navigating 3 different careers, really? Which was Europe, Quebec, and the rest of Canada for the longest time. Not only within the different material that I was presenting in terms of like an English record is an English record, the French one is a total different thing, but also in the way the concerts were put together. Basically, the image was very, very different. Here I was hosting the JUNOs, I was hosting the Canada Day celebrations, I was performing in, I had that sort of, I was, they gave me the Order of Canada pretty young, while in France I was more of a pop star, and it was noisier over there, but probably the foundation was much more solid here in a way, and I was more level artist here than I was over there. So obviously the image that people had of me over there was very, very different. And with the language barrier between obviously Quebec and the rest of Canada, then the cultures are different. People react differently to the same thing. So I did at a time had a feeling that I was 3 different artists in 3 different places. I've worked on that a lot, on that sort of duality, or and try to present myself the same way everywhere now. Although the material, obviously, a concert in Saskatchewan, for instance, is 100% different than a one in Paris.
You're trying to have a more uniform image
sound,
across all.
In sound, I would say, you know, in sound, I control more the live environment than the rest. Okay. Obviously, you know. So I usually give the same concert, you know, either in Saskatchewan or Paris. It's just that the songs will differ, but the sound will pretty much be the same. Yeah, I try to, on certain levels, I'm trying to even things out.
That initial difference between, particularly between Europe and, well, I guess between all 3, but was that a media creation, or was that by design between you and your team?
I think it was a media creation. I think the what happened over there was created with that culture, within that culture, by them. You know, and European audience is very different than an American audience from the start. So obviously they make a different monster. You know, they created something different over there that was sort of created here, I guess.
What do you mean by different? In which way?
Well, in those ways, you know, that I've expressed before, you know, that's it. And also by their reaction. I mean, we do concerts over there, and they would, in an hour and a half concert, they would, the infirmary would have to make room for over almost 500 people. I mean, they would faint and fall, and they was just the big party, and the security guys would be pulling girls out of the. No, but seriously, a lot that, you know. We sold a lot of records in English Canada, and that never happened in Toronto, for instance. You know what I'm saying? Why? Because the culture is different. You know, yeah.
And now to go more recently, well, I guess it's something that's, now having listened to you kind of talk about the beginning of your career, it sounds like something that's been kind of a characteristic. But what I'm getting at is that, you know, 3 years ago you released you started the first of 3 albums where you did country classics. You also did a French language album that was all duets. Early on. And you were just talking about how early on you were really working with a team of people to perfect everything. It sounds like you really feed off people, but specifically more recently with the duets album and the country albums, you're really feeding off of other people's songs, the duets, the collaborative approach.
Because I haven't had a chance to do that. You know, I was lucky enough. You know, the first record I put out sells 3 million copies. They're all my songs. So hey, I'm songwriter from day one. I haven't done the bar scenes. I haven't done the top 40 stuff. And for me, it's fun. It's actually fun to be able to do this. And the luck I have is there's millions of people listening to it instead of just doing it at the corner bar every Friday with my friends or in my garage. You know, so for me, it's really fun to do this. The duet records, they were all my tunes, so that doesn't count. But the Americana and the Forever Gentleman record that we just released last year in French, which is basically covers from the 50s and the 60s. There's 15 of us doing this, where it's just duet and trios, and we're just having a blast. We're having a lot of fun doing this. And for me, it's fun. It's fun, and people, you know, react very positively to this, so I can do an hour of that stuff and 2 hours of my own stuff, and ended up with 3-hour concerts like we did in Montreal a couple of years back. You know, it's just the more songs, the more fun. You know, and I'm enjoying myself a lot doing that. But the next record will be an all Roch Voisine English record. You know, in September or October. So it's just fun to take a pause and do other people's stuff once in a while.
Very cool. And lastly, getting back to my very best, looking back, and not specifically about commercial success, but is there a song or songs of yours that you're most proud of, as a work of art rather than as a commercial success?
You know, it's sometimes the songs that you're more proud of are not necessarily the more popular ones. I remember doing. I got this question asked. Someone asked me that question just a few hours ago, and yeah, it's a good question, and it's hard to answer because you know, I feel good about a few of them, you know, and I really like this one. I really like this one too. I did a good job on this. It's a tough question. It's a tough question. Of course, you know, there's songs that I'm really happy I wrote because they're really fun to perform. They're very effective songs, like "Deliver Me," for instance, you know, that I wrote with Amy Sky here in Toronto. Will always stay classic for me, and it's fun to perform. People respond very well to something like that. I'll always be there with David Foster, obviously, also. But also, I did an adaptation of a French song called "Je l'aime à mourir" from Francis Cabrel, a French artist, very famous, and it's his most popular song. And me and James Campbell, a friend of mine, did an English adaptation, and it's usually the opposite. You know, the fashion is to adapt an English tune to French, and rarely, you know, the opposite was done in the 50s and the 60s. You know, songs like "My Way" and stuff like that, but it's rarely done in that matter. And we did a pretty good arrangement. Jonas in Montreal re-recorded the version. It's called "Je l'aime à mourir." Actually, "Until Death Do Us Part," the new title. If you ever want to look it up, the iTunes or the on the net. And we were pretty proud of the lyric because it was a big adaptation job from a very famous lyric, you know, in a very famous French song, stuff like that. But like, I like to walk into any situation, any kind of writing relationship at any time, you know. So no, there's a lot of. I wrote songs with Jerry Goffin. I wrote songs with Billy Steinberg. I wrote songs with a lot of famous people, and I'm very proud of all those tunes, you know. And a lot of them haven't been recorded yet. I'm a bit like a squirrel, you know. I write a lot of stuff and I put everything on the shelf, and when it's the right timing, then I come up with those songs, you know. And some of those songs are 20 years old, 25 years old, and I still haven't used them. And there are some songs with these guys, you know, and hopefully in the next record.
Think you'll ever resurrect some of the old ones?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I should probably call the next record "Resurrection." Yeah, I know. Because prior to the pre-production, what I did is I sat down in my studio and I opened all the boxes of cassettes and DATs and ideas that I had long forgotten about, and I went through boxes. I'm serious, this big, 3 boxes like that of tapes. Just sitting there for a whole week listening to everything, and I found stuff I had forgotten about. Yeah. And all of a sudden you just do a pre-production, you know, good demo of it, and you go, oh my God, I would have totally forgotten this. This might make the record. Yeah. You know, it's great. So yeah, so "Resurrection" would be a good title for the next record.
Very cool. And Roch, I'll let you go. It's really an honor to get this chance to talk with you. Thank you so much for this. It's a pleasure for me as well. And a begrudging good luck to your Montreal Canadiens tonight in the playoffs. And,
they don't need luck. They just need to play hockey.
Well, they can give any extra luck to the Leafs. Thanks for this.
Thank you.
Cheers.